According to court records, in or around April 2025, Jehovah's Witnesses' New York office allegedly dispatched 2 representatives to speak with a woman seeking justice and accountability from the Watchtower organization. During this meeting, she alleges they told her, quote, "The governing body is aware of your case, and they wanted me to let you know that whatever you want, monetary, they will agree on. Just give us a number, any amount, you decide," end quote. But before we unpack this particular case, I want to try my best to explain how, in my opinion, the Jehovah's Witnesses have created a culture that makes it way too easy for the most vile, evil people in our society, those who would prey upon vulnerable individuals, as in this case, children, and how the Jehovah's Witness culture makes it far too easy for people like that to not only find their victims, but to avoid or delay consequences. This is a JW Thoughts Deep Dive. You might know the Jehovah's Witnesses as these people.
Another one.
Can I help you? Hello, my name's Keith, and you are?
I'm busy.
I should have you meet my friend Board. I'm just kidding. Well, anyway, I'll try and keep it real brief. There's a lot of problems out here in the world, you know what I'm saying? There's just taxes are crazy, inflation is crazy. School shootings, Donald Trump is the president, Soldier Boy, tell him, Tory Lane's sending messages from prison, you got the Epstein files, Loch Ness Monster, Ice Spice doing SpongeBob movies, the 17th Jurassic Park movie, having to wait for 3 years between seasons of Stranger Things, and with all of this chaos in the world, a lot of people are genuinely wondering, is there a real hope for the future?
No.
Yes, the Jehovah's Witnesses are best known for their public preaching work, but to truly understand the problem of child sexual abuse within this organization, you have to understand that it is more than a religion to Jehovah's Witnesses. It's a culture. It's a way of life. In the past, they had no compunctions with calling themselves a new world society. As the leadership for decades has been reinforcing the notion that good Jehovah's Witnesses remain separate from the world, and bad Jehovah's Witnesses dangerously dabble in talking, dressing, and dare I say even partying like worldly people. But seriously, if you've never been a Jehovah's Witness and see a picture like this, you might be confused. But for us who understand what it means to be separate from the world, this picture says 144,000 words. Jehovah's Witnesses are so paranoid about maintaining their perception as separate from the world that making the wrong choice between these two suits could result in a local scandal involving councils of elderly white men being assembled Avengers style to harass this poor guy because they don't like seeing his socks. And this honestly is quintessential in understanding this anti-tight pant wearing new world society's failure to protect children, because we see evidence of the leadership being so obsessed with maintaining an image and the image that they want to portray. And the only way that they can accomplish this is by maintaining power. Cults, multi-level marketing schemes, and high control groups, they all share this pyramidaic power structure. Not entirely sure if that's a word, but it honestly should be. Any hoozles. Foundational to this for the Jehovah's Witnesses is how it is not only power and control that increases as you move up the food chain. It is trust as well. In Jehovah's Witness culture, someone who is known as an exemplary witness has more trust than someone who just shows up. Elders and servants have more trust than normal exemplary publishers. Circuit overseers and branch overseers get still more trust. And finally, the governing body is to be trusted absolutely, because according to them, God directly is leading them. Listen to the longest serving member of the governing body kind of explain this.
The theme for this month is, in whom do you trust? Do you trust me? I hope so. In the world, many people are not trustworthy. Since we are living in the time of the end, and the demons are desperate and have influenced many people, we have to admit that trusting in everybody is not wise. As we are getting ever closer to the Great Tribulation, we might be confronted with scary challenges and tests related to nationalism. Will we keep trusting Jehovah? We trust we will. Jehovah will miraculously save his people throughout the Great Tribulation and arrange for their survival. Today, Jehovah provides direction to the slave through Jesus. Jesus, in turn, provides direction for his people through the faithful and discreet slave. We can have, therefore, full confidence in the scriptural insight, understanding, and guidance. Today, rumors are occasionally being spread in electronic form about the faithful slave. This has caused some concern on the part of some brothers, especially when the reports are commenting on court cases where some in the organization were accused. Sometimes reference is made to certain quotes, and readers then think, how can a quote be a rumor? A quote can be taken out of context. Critical reports often give only part of a matter and leave out other aspects. Often such rumors play on the emotions. Ask yourself, am I prone to believe rumors? And even if I am, should I spread it and undermine the trust that others have in the slave or in representative of the branch office? Avoid sensationalism by saying something like, can you believe what I heard about this matter, or this person, or that person, referring to a statement that may have appeared on Facebook, YouTube, or Twitter. The spread of rumors is like wildfire that is hard to control. It spreads distrust and can undermine someone's faith. This is not to say that the slave is perfect and never makes mistakes, but Jehovah and Jesus trust the imperfect slave who cares for things to the best of his ability and with the best of motives. Shouldn't we then trust the imperfect slave as well? Since Jehovah God and Jesus Christ completely trust the faithful and discreet slave, should we not do the same?
So Jehovah's Witnesses are supposed to put absolute trust in the governing body. But what have they said about trusting in elders, circuit overseers, or the organization? September 2025. We can trust our congregation elders. They have been trained to keep our confidential matters private, to base their counsel on the Bible rather than on their own opinions, and to follow through in helping us carry our burdens. February 2022. Today, Jehovah leads the earthly part of his organization by means of the faithful and discreet slave, which is another word for the governing body. Like the first century governing body, this slave oversees God's people worldwide and gives direction to congregation elders. The elders, in turn, implement the direction in the congregation. We show that we trust in Jehovah's way of doing things by heeding the direction we receive from the organization and the elders. Now, I am not being hyperbolic when I say this, but I could spend the next 3 to 4 hours doing nothing but reading quotes that reiterate this point. Trust the elders, trust the organization, trust the governing body absolutely, as if you are trusting in God himself. And this translates to a very terrifying problem, because by the time a Jehovah's Witness child has reached the age of like 12, they have heard this told to them thousands and thousands of times. Now, on a personal level, I think advertising to children should be illegal because a developing brain is more susceptible to suggestion. And the more that brain hears a command like trust the elders, trust the organization, it will become that child's reality. And just like marketing agencies arguing that their predatory or misleading commercials should be legal because they contain barely visible fine print that no kid will ever notice, I simply do not care if on a handful of occasions Watchtower has issued vague cautions about elders through the years. The overwhelming super mega ultra majority of their rhetoric is telling children and parents to trust elders. Why is this important to understanding Watchtower's historic failure to protect children? Well, there is a predator playbook, if you will, and it's not really a mystery on how those predators operate or what that playbook looks like. And Watchtower, unfortunately, checks all the boxes for essentially creating a playground for these predators. As difficult as it is to come to terms with, there are people in our society who want to do horrible things to other people, and they want to do those horrible things in the easiest, most effective way possible without getting caught. And I like to try and take something familiar to help me understand the otherwise unimaginable. So take, for instance, speeding. Despite overwhelming evidence and research of the dangers of driving fast, there are people who are going to speed. Traffic laws, higher insurance premiums, fines, even losing someone's license, it's viewed as just an obstacle, not really a deterrent. And they will set up speed trap maps, they'll buy all manner of doohickeys and gizmos and gadgets to assist them in breaking the law. And this isn't apples to apples, but I feel that the psychology of it can be very similar because at the end of the day, criminals want to commit crimes without wanting to be caught. And so just like that person who wants to speed and sets up their speed trap maps or buys doohickeys, that's kind of their playbook, reverse engineering that when it comes to predators, we can ask ourselves, what is that predator playbook?
From actual child predators, News 8 investigator Charlotte Huffman joins us now to kick off a month of WFAA originals. Charlotte?
Izzy, we wanted to know, how does a predator earn a child's trust? How do they prey right under their parents' noses? Those are the heartbreaking questions from the families of so many victims. Tonight, we're hearing the predators' unsettling stories about how they would protect children from themselves.
Too often, the people trusted to protect children choose to prey on them instead.
Did you know in your head at the time that what you were doing was wrong?
Yeah, absolutely.
This is a North Texas man who sexually assaulted a child.
So you guys had sex?
We had a sexual relationship, yes.
He went to prison. Now, years later, he's agreed to tell us the secrets of predators as long as we hide his identity.
Are you the type of person that parents might look at and say, he looks like a sex offender?
No.
You're the opposite.
Absolutely. In fact, I would be the kind of person that they would look at and say, there's not a chance in the world he would ever have done what he did. Not a chance in the world.
Perpetrators often wear a mask of deception.
Terry Miller is one of the nation's leading experts on the topic.
It's very common for these perpetrators to be teachers of the year and be award-winning coaches. The victim is the only one who knows the monster.
They work to earn their victims' trust.
You become the child's confidant.
You become the child's confidant. You become their all in all. You become the one that they look to as the one that is going to provide their answers and give them their guidance.
So once you earn the child's trust, it becomes easier to push the boundaries.
That's correct.
So we are smelling this fart straight from this pig's butthole. Trust is a key component in the process that takes this from someone's disgusting, deplorable fantasy to a living nightmare. And Jehovah's Witnesses give the same level of trust that should only be reserved for close family members to strangers who are Jehovah's Witnesses, and even more trust than they would give to their family members to elders, circuit overseers, and the governing body. Now, this is when an apologist might come in and, they want to chime in and say, well, actually...
Children, Jehovah wants you to be happy and keep you safe. But some people want to do bad things to you. So Jehovah gave you a conscience. It's like an alarm system that helps you to know right from wrong. It will protect you from danger. So, Mom and I will help you test your alarm system. Ready? What if someone tells you something that makes you feel uncomfortable or scares you? What do you do?
I'm not sure, but that's weird. Stop!
Very good. Tell them to stop it. And you tell Mom and Daddy. No matter what someone tells you, never keep a secret from us.
What if they ask you to do something that makes you feel uncomfortable?
I would say no.
You're right. You should say no and walk away.
What if they try to touch you where they shouldn't?
I wouldn't let them. I'd get out of there.
Good, Caleb. Even if it's an adult you know and trust, you should say no and run away. And you should yell, "Stop doing that! I'm going to tell on you!"
Stop doing that! I'm going to tell on you!
The world can be a scary place, but you are never alone. Remember, you have your conscience, your mom and dad who love you, and you have Jehovah.
This represents a tiny needle of caution in this hectare-size field of hay where Jehovah's Witness children are bombarded and brainwashed with the notion that they have to have absolute trust in Jehovah and his organization. Elders, circuit overseers, they represent Jehovah and his organization. So this cartoon is simply not enough. It's not going to have any meaningful effect on protecting innocent children. And if there's an apologist out there still shaking their fists and saying, well, what about school? Parents trust teachers when they bring them to school. So should parents just not take their kids to school? And to that, I would say schools have transparent, publicly available safety protocols and procedures that are available to parents and encourage parents to be involved in not only designing but implementing these policies and procedures. Does Watchtower do that? No. When something horrible inevitably does happen, will a school hold accountability for that horrible incident and actively look for ways that they can create a more robust system so that way that doesn't happen again? Absolutely. Does Watchtower hold accountability or try and say, okay, here's how we're going to change our policy to make it better?
Now, what is another circumstance that might quickly shaken our faith if we're not on guard? Well, it has to do with the apostates. Now, there's something that the apostates are talking about and trying to put forward. The media has picked it up. Others have also picked it up. And that is our scriptural position of having two witnesses a requirement for judicial action if there's no confession. Now, if you open your Bibles to Deuteronomy 19:15, our good reasoning is pretty solid on this. In Deuteronomy 19:15, the scripture is very, very clear. It says, "No single witness may convict another for any error or any sin that he may commit. on the testimony of 2 witnesses or on the testimony of 3 witnesses, the matter should be established. It's very clear, isn't it? You cannot establish a judicial committee based on 1 witness. But now listen, here's what they say. Well, now look, the Old Testament also says that adulteresses should be stoned. Now, since you're not doing that, why do you stick to this 2-witness rule? And see, if you're not careful, that can do some tricks on your mind because you have to think it through. Well, how might we do that? Well, we'll go to Matthew chapter 18 and verse 16, because obviously Christ Jesus established the Christian arrangement. And notice what he said, Matthew 18 and verse 16. He says, but if he does not listen, take along with you 1 or 2 more, so that on the testimony of 2 or 3 witnesses, every matter may be established. So Christ Jesus establishes the fact that there has to be 2 witnesses. Now, it doesn't mean that if there's only 1 witness, that there's no consequences. There might be, depending upon the situation. But the scriptures are very clear. Before a judicial committee can be convened, there has to be a confession or 2 witnesses. So we will never change our scriptural position on that subject.
This was their response to public outcry when the world was put on notice that Jehovah's Witnesses have this 2-witness rule. During the Australian Royal Commission, the Jehovah's Witnesses were investigated for their practices with handling allegations of sexual abuse, and it was brought to the attention of Watchtower leaders that their rules had failed thousands of people. Thousands of people were affected by this ridiculous rule that's cobbled together in the Bible that says you have to have 2 witnesses before something can be established. And so thousands of people that did bring allegations to their elders, because they don't bring them to the police, because the police are part of Satan's world. The elders are part of Jehovah's arrangement. So they naturally would bring this to elders, and elders would tell them, there's not 2 witnesses. There's nothing that we can do about it. We have to wait on Jehovah. This man responds, this is on their website still, publicly by telling the world, we ain't changing. So trying to compare other institutions that might also have problems when it comes to child safeguarding, trying to compare them, you can't, because those institutions, for the most part, will do what they reasonably can to hold accountability and try and make changes in the future. What do the Jehovah's Witnesses do? They stand up with their chest out and say, we are not changing these rules even after it has been firmly established and demonstrated with evidence that their rules fail people. But then they go a step further and try and gaslight Jehovah's Witnesses into thinking that there isn't actually any problems at all.
Another way we can contribute to the oneness, rejecting false stories that are designed to separate us from Jehovah's organization. As an example, think about the apostate-driven lies and dishonesties that Jehovah's organization is permissive toward pedophiles. I mean, that is ridiculous, isn't it? If anybody takes action against someone who would threaten our young ones and takes action to protect our young ones, it's Jehovah's organization. We reject outright such lies.
So if trusting in the wrong individuals is going to be a major risk factor, then giving unchecked, unverified, and absolute trust to people within your religious hierarchy is going to lead to a catastrophic failure, a historic failure. Hey, but at least Watchtower only fails in this one way, and they don't, compound their mistakes by also.
In each story, the predator, the victim, and the ending are different. But both offenders say their stories and the many others like them always start the same.
It's what we refer to in counseling as grooming your victim.
Grooming is the common practice of breaking down a child's moral fibers.
They first rape the child's mind and in order to rape their body.
The predators say the first step is isolating their victim.
Creating opportunities to be alone with her, apart and separate from the group, on the bus, sitting together all the time.
So a second well-known strategy for predators is isolation, and a robust system is going to be necessary for any entity or organization that is going to get children involved in any group activities. And let's be very clear, the Jehovah's Witnesses are very proud of the fact that they involve children in adult activities. Take, for instance, this really bizarre and blatant ripoff of Dora the Explorer that Jehovah's Witnesses produced.
Sophia, are you ready to go out in service? What's in your bag? Looks like you're missing something. What do you need for service? Very good! You need your Bible for service. Do you need anything else? Kids, can you help Sophia? Which one does she need for service?
Magazines!
That's right, kids.
Or how about this ripoff of the old SpongeBob, Krabby Patty, Krusty Krab training video?
So you are excited to go out in service. Do you think you are ready? Not so fast. Before you go in the ministry, there's a few things we need to go over. First, we must learn the 3 P's.
The 3 P's?
Yes, preparation, personal appearance, and proper behavior.
No, you can't make a Krabby Patty without understanding the phrase poop.
Poop?
People order our patties.
They even try and encourage children to become what are known as pioneers. Now, a pioneer is someone who vows to spend a given amount of time knocking on people's doors, participating in the public preaching work. And this number changes a lot down through the years. It's gone from 100 hours per month. I think it's down now to 50 hours per month. But it's a lot of time that's spent. And yes, they encourage even children and hold up as examples other children who have gotten involved in this pioneering work.
Sister Lydia Diaz is now serving as a regular pioneer. We're so happy for you. We know you'll have many spiritual adventures ahead of you. Adventures ahead of you.
What?
Hey, Dad. I want to be a pioneer.
For a while after my parents got married, they might have just gotten a little distracted with marriage, family, taking care of the family. But at one point, they made a move across the country, and they used that as an opportunity to simplify. And my mom was able to start regular pioneering at that time. And I remember as a child how different both of my parents were, just in their happiness and in life in general, because she was able to do more for Jehovah.
Nice. How old were you when that happened, when your mom started pioneering and you saw this change?
I was about 9.
Okay. And so when did you start regular pioneering then?
So actually, the next year, my sister and I both got to join her pioneering.
So you were 10 years old.
Yeah.
That is amazing.
Thank
10
you.
years old starting pioneering. Great.
So clearly, the Jehovah's Witnesses bring their children into the preaching work with them. And if you've never been a Jehovah's Witness and you're wondering where I'm going with this or how it has any correlation to isolation, let me explain some of the logistic nuances that you would only know if you've been a Jehovah's Witness. So the preaching work is a very organized activity. The entirety of Jehovah's Witnesses are all broken down into these smaller things called congregations. And each congregation has an area, an actual map in which they preach in that specified area. And their congregation will set up what are known as meetings for service. And these will be, once or twice on the weekend, a couple times during the week as well. And at these meetings for service, people just show up, group up, and go and preach in a specified area. So a car group, that's what this little grouping is called, that car group could be consistent of, let's say, just for the sake of the point here, a mom with a 10-year-old, another mom with a 6-year-old, and a middle-aged guy who's self-employed, but he goes out preaching every Wednesday. So the three of them all get paired up to go and preach together in one car group. So when they arrive at the territory, the moms most often would take the 6-year-old with them so they can, monitor the younger child, and leave the 10-year-old to go and preach with the middle-aged man by themselves. And they could be gone for 45 minutes to an hour knocking on doors, but they would be unsupervised from their parents. And this isn't a, cooked up, made up scenario that happens every once in a while. This is something that I suspect is happening right now, all around the world. Because when I was a Jehovah's Witness, I pioneered for 10 years. And this was something that happened weekly. And another important aspect of their preaching work is following up on with people who have shown any type of interest. So if the same car group wants to follow up on interests, one of the moms is like, oh, can you go on this return visit with me? And they might go and could be gone from anywhere from 5 to 30 minutes and leave their kids alone with this person in the car. Now, this might seem insane. This might seem very irresponsible of the parents, and it would be easy to point the finger towards them and well, that's just bad parenting. But you have to remember the very first, part of that playbook was trust. So Jehovah's Witnesses view their fellow witnesses because they've been told, they've been brainwashed from birth to look at their fellow witnesses as family. Listen to this music video that very specifically says that other Jehovah's Witnesses are your family, even if you've never met them before.
I'm on the edge of a human sea, and the tide is in. My eyes are surfing on unfamiliar faces, and still I know them. They're family. You wave at me from across the stadium. What a beautiful sight. I'm not careful, I'll start to cry. We are sisters, we are brothers, sons and daughters, and more. And I love you even though I never met you before. Yeah. We are sisters, we are brothers, sons and daughters, and more.
And so it really doesn't seem that insane to leave your children unattended with a family member, a trusted family member. But as I've said, there's no background checks, there's no verification, there's nothing. There's not actually really good reasons to just assume that someone might be a safe individual. And so with this problem of trust, and which is leading to the situation of isolation, This is a very obvious problem that exists. So let's be charitable here and discuss what policies and procedures that the governing body has put in place with respect to child safeguarding in the ministry. If you go to the Watchtower Online Library, which is a compendium of all their vast writings, and search under field ministry, you will be treated to thousands of references, from the type of bag you use while preaching to how to count your time. It used to be a requirement that people report their how much time they spend preaching to the Watchtower headquarters. And in all of this, they have one reference for parents: exercising caution with their minor children. Parents should exercise what caution when their minor children share in the field ministry. Christian parents properly take their children along with them in the field ministry, training them to keep the kingdom good news with others. In doing so, there is a need to keep a watchful eye on their young ones because of the potential dangers in the territory, even in the quote-unquote safer neighborhoods. More and more children are the objects of violence and abuse because of the increase of greed and sexual depravity in these critical times in which we live. An important note here is that when it says critical times in which we live, this is a reference to a scripture in 2 Timothy that basically describes the world outside of the congregation. So all of the things that are referenced when they say, oh, this greed and sexual depravity, that's a Jehovah's Witness is going to read that and think, yes, that's what the world does, not inside the congregation. So this isn't specifically addressing any issues within the congregation. Parents need to take reasonable precautions to safeguard their little ones from those who would prey upon them. What can be done? The Bible wisely counsels that we be cautious and look ahead to foresee danger. The intent here is not to make rules, but it is wise for a parent or other adult to accompany a child when engaging in field ministry. If two responsible young publishers work together, it is advisable for a parent or another adult to have them in view at all times. Of course, as a child grows older and proves more responsible, parents can decide if he or she requires less direct parental supervision. So you have here a reference that it could be the parent or another responsible adult, another Jehovah's Witness that could be going out and taking with them your children to go preaching. And they give reference to a 1992 Our Kingdom Ministry question box, and that doesn't really help them at all. Parents should not leave their children who are not yet recognized as unbaptized publishers at the meeting for field service, expecting others to care for them. Concerned parents recognize their personal responsibility to supervise the activity of their children. Of course, other responsible publishers may be willing to help out in the training of young children in the congregation who show genuine interest in serving Jehovah in the ministry. So this isn't advising parents to not leave your children at the Kingdom Hall to go preaching with strangers. It's saying don't do it if they're not an unbaptized publisher. If they are a baptized publisher, sure, why not? Now, I can speak from personal experience on this one. I was dropped off at meetings or picked up for field service by other adults in the congregation regularly, like at bare minimum once a month. And as an adult, because it was so normalized to me, I engaged in this same behavior. I picked up minors and took them preaching with me. They would come and preach with me all day long. After we were done, we would go and get ice cream, or they would come over to my house and play video games. I know it's eyebrows raising now to think about that. And sometimes genuinely, I look back at those situations and just like, if I was a different person, if I was the wrong person, like that child's life could have been ruined forever. Like that easily. It's scary, man. To conclude this section of the video, just in thinking about Jehovah's Witness parents leaving their children unsupervised with other Jehovah's Witnesses in the preaching work. I just wanted to read in its entirety a section from a Watchtower back in 1997. I chose this one because people used to always say that I look like the kid on the cover. So, shout outs to 7-year-old Wally. I guess I look like that. But I don't want to give you any primers here or anything. I just want to read this, and you can form your own opinion about the situation of Jehovah's Witness parents leaving their children with other Jehovah's Witnesses and thinking that it's a safe place because they are Jehovah's Witnesses. What if a baptized adult Christian sexually molests a child? Is the sinner so wicked that Jehovah will never forgive him? Not necessarily so. Jesus said that blasphemy against the Holy Spirit was unforgivable, and Paul said that there is no sacrifice for sins left for one who practices sin willfully despite knowing the truth. But nowhere does the Bible say that an adult Christian who sexually abuses a child, whether incestually or otherwise, cannot be forgiven. Indeed, his sins can be washed clean if he repents sincerely from the heart and turns his conduct around. However, he may still have to struggle with the wrong fleshly impulses he cultivated, and there may be consequences that he cannot avoid. Depending on the law of the land where he lives, the molester may well have to serve a prison term or face other sanctions from the state. The congregation will not protect him from this. Moreover, the man has revealed a serious weakness that henceforth will have to be taken into account. If he seems to be repentant, he will be encouraged to make spiritual progress, share in the field service, even have parts in the theocratic ministry school and non-teaching parts in the service meeting. This does not mean, though, he will qualify to serve in a position of responsibility in the congregation. What are the scriptural reasons for this? For one thing, an elder must be self-controlled. True, none of us have perfect self-control, but a dedicated adult Christian who falls into the sin of child sexual abuse reveals an unnaturally fleshly weakness. Experience has shown that such an adult may well molest other children. True, not every child molester repeats the sin, but many do. And the congregation cannot read hearts to tell who is and who is not liable to molest children again. Hence, Paul's counsel to Timothy applies with special force in the case of baptized adults who have molested children. Never lay your hands hastily upon any man, neither be a sharer in the sins of others. For the protection of our children, a man known to have been a child molester does not qualify for a responsible position in the congregation. Moreover, he cannot pioneer or serve in any other special full-time service. Some may ask, have not some committed other types of sin and apparently repented, only to repeat the sin later? Yes, that has happened, but there are other factors to consider. If, for example, an individual makes immoral advances to another adult, the adult should be able to resist his or her advances. Children are much easier to deceive, confuse, or terrorize. The Bible speaks of a child's lack of wisdom. Jesus used children as an example of humble innocence. The innocence of a child includes a complete lack of experience. Most children are open, eager to please, and thus vulnerable to abuse by a scheming adult whom they know and trust. Therefore, the congregation has a responsibility before Jehovah to protect its children. Well-trained children learn to obey and honor their parents, the elders, and other adults. It would be a shocking perversion if one of these authority figures were to misuse that child's innocent trust so as to seduce or force him or her to submit to sexual acts. Those who have been sexually molested in this way often struggle for years to overcome the resulting emotional trauma. Hence, a child molester is subject to severe congregational discipline and restrictions. It is not his status as an authority figure that should be of concern, but rather the unblemished purity of the congregation. If a child molester sincerely repents, he will recognize the wisdom of applying Bible principles. If he truly learns to abhor what is wicked, he will despise what he did and struggle to avoid repeating his sin. Further, he will surely thank Jehovah for the greatness of his love, as a result of which a repentant sinner, such as he is, can still worship our holy God and hope to be among the upright who reside on earth forever.
What did you do or say to make sure that her parents didn't know or suspect anything?
Lied continually. We would sneak around and find ways to meet at the mall or meet at the movie theater. When we became sexual, that's when everything went into protection mode. We've got to hide this. We've got to keep this secret.
The conversation we had was difficult to hear, but listen as he gives advice to parents everywhere.
If a parent sees their child spending an inordinate amount of time with a significant adult that is outside the family, that is something to really spend some time looking at. If your child themselves starts talking about another significant adult in ways that you're going, I didn't realize you guys were that close. Any attempt to gather favor, connection is a part of that grooming process.
They say the number one deterrent is an adult who monitors the child's electronic communication.
Because this whole situation thrives in secrecy. It will never survive in the midst of the light.
The Jehovah's Witnesses do not have a good reputation when it comes to transparency and cooperation with government officials in investigating how allegations of abuse are handled within their organization. Their head lawyer, Philip Brumley, was personally, not in the organization, but personally fined over $150,000 for giving inaccurate and misleading statements to a court. They have been found to be destroying files that they were specifically told not to. They will do everything in their power to avoid any type of cooperation with a government agency. And the reason for this level of secrecy is pretty obvious for some of the things that I've been saying throughout this video. They have this worldview that their organization has been handpicked and is special in being used by God. So they think that their procedures are better than something that might come from Satan's system. They view those government agencies as chess pieces that Satan is using to attack their organization. That's why they just blatantly come out and say, it's ridiculous, it's propaganda, this is apostate lies that the news media is telling you, even though anyone who has the internet can look and find this information for themselves. And on a individual level, for every Jehovah's Witness family, they are being inundated with a constant stream of information, of printed material, of videos, of books, of music, that are reinforcing the idea that they need to be separate from the world, and that in the very near future, those same government agencies that they would be reporting allegations to are going to turn against their organization. They believe that in the very near future, during the Great Tribulation, that government agencies are going to try and round up all Jehovah's Witnesses and throw them in prison. There is an inherent skepticism and apprehension to going to those same organizations and entities that are going to be turning against them. So an ordinary Jehovah's Witness is going to feel a lot more comfortable and confident in going to their elders because they feel that they are being directed by God, and they're not going to feel comfortable going to a government entity that they've been told in the very near future is going to throw them in jail for the fact that they are Jehovah's Witnesses. It's not hard to imagine how difficult it would be for a Jehovah's Witness to break this mold, to break this silence, to get out of their little secretive bubble, to actually make a proper report to the proper authorities that can actually handle it with some level of expertise. So as far as secrecy goes, again, you can just put on your old thinking hat and come up with a pretty reasonable answer yourself. So why? That's the real question. Why do they do this? And the horrifying, disturbing answer I feel to this is their reputation. In that article that section that I read in that 1997 Watchtower, when somehow they managed to talk about, this is one of the only articles that I can find where they openly talk about abuse within their organization. And in that, they managed to immediately say that the person can be forgiven, they can maintain their relationship with Jehovah and start preaching again, and that they get to live in the paradise as well. But in there, they did say that it's not the person's reputation, it's the congregation's reputation. And that is the most important thing to the leadership, to every Jehovah's Witness, is the reputation of the congregation above everything else. And I was trying to find a parallel example that I could show of this mentality that they have, where the safety of children is secondary to the reputation that they've established. And I think I found a really good one.
In the circuit work, we visit several poor communities in the city of Rio de Janeiro. One of the challenges we face here is security. In these communities, there are a lot of conflicts and shootings between rival drug cartels and between gang members and the police. It's common for us to see armed gang members when we're preaching, and often they're taking drugs. When we're visiting the congregations in these communities, the brothers really take care of us and don't let us out of their sight. However, just knowing that our brothers are always close by gives us the strength to continue serving them in the circuit.
So here they're acknowledging that this is a dangerous area. There's gang violence and they're shooting, their bullets flying, it's pandemonium. And like the next shot, they are showing a kid out there. Why does a child need to be in a dangerous situation for no reason? Why do they need to have the responsibility of going and preaching and campaigning for other people to become Jehovah's Witnesses? It's not necessary. It's not safe. But they have a reputation to maintain. Their reputation is that they have children involved in their theocratic activities. They're not like those other churches that, send their kids off to Sunday school. No, they are right next to their parents or responsible Jehovah's Witnesses' sides. And this, to me, was a good parallel of how they simply don't care about the safety. The number one concern for them, even when shooting a propaganda piece, is how can we maintain this image that we've curated and created? And any cult leader, that's kind of what they do. They want their followers, they want their movement to be shaped and molded in whatever thing that they have going on in their heads. So acknowledging that there's problems, they can't do that because that would be a bad reflection on the leadership. In implementing changes, well, changes would mean that you didn't have it right before, and that would look bad for the leadership. All of it comes down to reputation over safety. Now, this bizarre video took place in Brazil, which is where the lawsuit originated that I began this video with, where the two Watchtower representatives had offered any amount of money to someone to keep them quiet, essentially, and not go forward with trying to make things more public, and for Watchtower to actually be held accountable and to admit that they had been wrong. So let's take a look at some more of the specifics surrounding that, and it's a difficult read. Miss Souza brings this action for damages for the repeated sexual assault and sexual battery she endured as a 12-year-old child at the hands of Angelo Rovazeo, then a circuit overseer for Jehovah's Witnesses in São Paulo, Brazil, and senior minister entrusted with supervising multiple congregations, and defendants' gross negligence and intentional cover-up of Rovazeo's heinous crimes. As further set forth below, for nearly a year beginning in 2011, Rovazeo exploited his authority and position of trust to isolate and prey upon Miss Souza within the very kingdom hall where she worshipped. He used his ministerial status to isolate, groom, and control Miss Souza, subjecting her to ongoing sexual violence that included forcing her to undress, masturbating in front of her, forcing her to watch on a weekly basis. On several occasions, Rovazeo Miss Souza inside the assembly hall of Jehovah's Witnesses in Maripora itself, sometimes while thousands of worshippers were gathered outside, covering her mouth to silence her cries and commanding that she remain quiet while congregants and her own family stood outside the room, and on other occasions at his own home, where he warned that if Miss Souza spoke out, she would be expelled and shunned by her faith community. Ultimately, Rovazeo's abuse and repeated culminated with Miss Souza becoming pregnant. Concerned about what would happen if anyone found out, she began drinking and excessively exercising, thinking it might hide the pregnancy. In January 2012, at 13 years old, Miss Souza had a miscarriage at her home in the bathroom. Nobody took her to the hospital. The harm Miss Souza suffered was compounded not only by the acts of Rovazeo, but by an organization-wide cover-up directed by the leadership of Jehovah's Witnesses. Despite receiving multiple reports and letters disclosing the abuse, including written pleas to elders, circuit overseers, and the Brazilian branch office, and despite that the abuse was readily apparent, defendants in both Brazil and New York failed to alert authorities. Instead, they silenced Miss Souza, punished her for misconduct, and transferred Rovazeo to another congregation. Incredulously, internal guidelines for branch office service desks instructed elders to conceal allegations of child sexual abuse and to refrain from contacting law enforcement officials. In 2013, while still struggling with the effects of the abuse and isolation imposed by Rovazeo and the congregation, Miss Souza was targeted again by another member of the Jehovah's Witness community, Eldelmo Batista, who initiated sexually explicit communications and further exploited her vulnerability. Local elders became aware of Batista's predatory conduct, yet failed to act, choosing instead to protect the congregation's image. The continuation of abuse within the same congregation underscored a systematic failure and a culture of concealment. These actions, conceived and directed from defendants' New York headquarters and replicated by their Brazilian branch office, were not isolated failures, but the product of an entrenched global policy of obstruction and concealment. Defendants prioritized institutional reputation over the safety of the children entrusted to their care, systematically silencing victims and protecting abusers. In 2023, after more than a decade of silence and trauma, Brazilian authorities arrested Rovazeo. He was convicted and sentenced to 15 years and 9 months in prison for child sex abuse. As a direct result of the heinous acts perpetrated against her and the subsequent cover-up, plaintiff suffered and continues to suffer profound physical and emotional injuries, including infertility, chronic pain, severe depression, post-traumatic stress disorder, and suicide attempts. She has been formally diagnosed with complex trauma and major depressive disorder and remains unable to sustain employment due to the severity of her symptoms. She brings this action so that the defendants responsible for enabling this abuse are finally held accountable.
The governing body has also asked me to address another topic that I must say hits close to my heart, being a father who raised 2 boys. The subject is the abuse of children and the damaging effects this can have on such innocent victims. As an organization, we view all such abuse of children, whether physical, sexual, or emotional, as deplorable. As you likely know, Jehovah's Witnesses take a stronger position than most on the scriptural inappropriateness of any form of immorality. However, to take advantage of innocent young ones is absolutely despicable. As a religious organization, we have taken a decisive stand against such behavior. It is our fervent desire to protect children from any kind of abuse. Our policy as an organization is that one professing to be a victim or his parents should never be discouraged from reporting the incident to the appropriate authorities. And again, remember that the world in general was still somewhat naive about the magnitude of this issue and the gravity of the problem. I read the 5 articles, then I looked at my 2 boys, and I said a prayer to Jehovah, thanking him for moving the organization to be so proactive in trying to help parents to protect their young ones from the plague of the new morality and the abuse of children. This issue has been straightforwardly addressed in print many times since then. We cannot control everything that an individual might say. It is clear that over the decades, protecting children from abuse is a top priority for this organization. We are proud of our reputation in this regard. And we look forward to the time in God's new world when no one, young or old, will ever again be a victim of abuse.
It makes me sick to hear this man, who was a former leader of the Jehovah's Witness, a governing body member, say that he is proud of the reputation that the organization has. The fact that he knows how many tens of millions of dollars they have spent in settling cases that they knew they would lose, or they didn't want to hurt their reputation and were willing to just pay people off for their silence, essentially. Not that there's anything wrong if someone wants to take a settlement, because at least it's a way that maybe they can make their life a little bit easier, and you know, we don't have to get into all that. But I just remember one of the last conversations I have ever had with my parents, and I had shown them evidence, just undeniable proof, not apostate lies, but just publicly available court records that showed them that Watchtower had spent millions of dollars in settling abuse cases. And I asked them a very simple question. How comfortable are you with knowing that some percentage of the money that you donate to Watchtower goes to settling cases where Watchtower is liable to pay damages because of their failure to protect children? And yet outwardly they say that they are proud of the reputation that they have. How comfortable are you with that? And I'll never forget, they looked at me as if I was speaking a foreign language, as if it came off like a Star Trek episode and was just speaking a bunch of gobbledygook. It's like they couldn't assimilate any of the words. Like they didn't say anything. They just stared. It's like a barrier went up. And I hope that with repeated efforts of people trying to stand up to this behemoth of an organization that are trying their hardest to suffer and work through the pain of reliving, bygone trauma and being brave enough to stand up to Watchtower. I hope with all of their efforts that maybe that barrier for some Jehovah's Witnesses might break. They might hear and listen and think to themselves. And Watchtower has talked so much over the years and pointed at other religions, other groups, and really tried to say, hey, look at that religion over there. They have a habit of covering over abuse. You should really examine your beliefs, because if your leaders are willing to cover up abuse, are they being led by God? And so I wanted to conclude this video and read you a quote from a Watchtower. It's actually an Awake article, April 8th, 1999. At all times know where your children are and who is with them. Who are your child's close friends? Who are your child's caregivers during your absence? Can they be trusted? That does not mean, of course, that a parent has to be suspicious of everyone. Make a proper assessment of the adults in your child's life, looking beyond outward appearances. Think of the heartbreak of parents who have discovered, too late, that their children have been abused by trusted clergymen, teachers, or even close family members. It would be good for you as a parent to ask yourself, does my church tolerate or cover up child abuse? Is my religion holding firmly to high moral principles? Answers to such questions could help you to make wise choices in protecting your children.